answer to what is the right level of the public sector.
I thought the public sector was...
Jonathan, you...
I thought the public sector was 50...
Oh, right, okay.
Sorry, I thought
that's
the public...
including transfers.
Sorry, what?
That's including transfers, that's not consumption.
Oh, sorry, can I just be ignorant then? I thought the public sector accounted for something like 50% of employed people in this country.
Oh, no. 6 million at the moment.
Right, okay.
Yeah, no. It's about 1 in 5. It's about 20% of employees at the moment.
Okay.
And that includes, the NHS and the people who are working for the NHS in that sort of contracted sense. So yes, it's about 1 in 5. Jonathan, did you want to jump in there? I introduced Jonathan Aldred. Jonathan has written a brilliant book on economics. If you want to know why economics doesn't work, read his book, The Sceptical Economist. It's fantastic. I'll give him a plug as well.
Well, I'm not a macroeconomist, unlike Judges, so I can't give him a number as his answer, but I know which part of the world I look to. I look to Scandinavia. Scandinavia is a model of a different balance between public and private sector that's succeeded over the long term. And there are all sorts of ingredients in there which are quite interesting to explore. For instance, the attitude towards taxation they have in Scandinavia. In Scandinavia, in economic theory, as you know, you never want any taxation because it's a disincentive to work and all that rubbish. But
not if by paying taxes you provide public goods. You can write down models in which there's a certain amount of public goods provision. Yeah, but I think most economists would accept that.
Well, it depends what you mean by most economists.
Yes.
Well, most undergraduates who go through economics degrees and go on to influential places in society haven't read that book because that's not in the textbook. And it's not anywhere near the textbook.
Yes.
As you well know from a standard economics textbook, just that they don't get beyond the text. I mean, we're not going to go into a technical debate. It wouldn't be fair on the rest of the audience. So I've looked at Scandinavia. What was the other question?
Can I jump back on that one? I'll jump back in on that, and I'll come back on Italy and Greece as well. But the right answer is what the ballot box decides. What's wrong with actually presenting people with a choice? Why is the only choice we've got, which is we're going to privatise, we're going to outsource, we're going to sack, and it's a terrible thing that the state is doing these things, because as far as I can see, as I said earlier, a great many of the things that I really want in life are provided by the state. If I look at my children, what they get out of life, a great many of them are provided by the state, whether it's their education or the swimming pool over the road or the playing field that they want to go to, or the paths that they want to ride their bikes down, or whatever else it might be. I mean, they think that those, the fripperies that they're currently writing lists of, which they want for Christmas, are the exciting bits. Going back to cappuccino, that's, the nutmeg and or the hot chocolate on the top, that's the bits that they remember. But actually, the really important things are actually for them being provided by, well, us and the state. It's a very, very important role. People want healthcare. People want to have public services. When we discovered that we were going to sell off the forests, people suddenly realised that forests were really valuable to them. Now people realise that the NHS might disappear very soon, just how important it is to them. People realise that actually you can't provide for your elderly relative and pay only £400 a week to a care home to do so, because if you do, they're going to be living in squalor. They're not going to actually have their bed changed often enough. They're going to get bed sores as a result of the fact we're not willing to provide enough money to provide what people need. So what's the right amount of money? It's actually the spending that we require to actually meet that need. And my actual answer is to you, why do we need such a large private sector? How many more of these do we need? And what is the next technical innovation? Of course you'll say, well, you don't know because it hasn't been invented yet. I know that you could say that's always been the way. But what is it that we are so desperately short of, which somebody is going to create soon, which is going to make our lives so much more imaginatively better? Where is the massive technical innovation? Because I'll tell you, that might be what people think is amazing, but that had much smaller impact on life than the washing machine. If you want to choose an innovation which really changed life, the Hoover, the washing machine and so on, they really changed life. The mobile phone's been absolutely...
No, you shouldn't do the mobile phone, you should do the internet. And then that's a much better comparison.
Maybe, but even then, I'm not quite sure. Even if, we have maybe reached a point, and let's be blunt, in terms of pure consumption and sustainability, I am sure we have reached a point where consumption has got to the point where we can no longer sustain this level. And if that's true, if we're actually literally consuming too much,
I'm not in any way leaving because I have a private previous engagement that Ash knows about.
Well, what you've actually got to do, and the second part of your question, is simply collect the tax. If Greece and Italy had collected their tax, they wouldn't be bust.
But maybe you might be coming there. Are you going to bring him along to the union?
Oh.
Send me a message when we come along. Okay. Not that union.
So I genuinely am not convinced we need to over-expand the private sector more, and you will find in here quite a big section which is where I think we need to reduce consumer debt. Consumer debt has been deliberately created, I think, to keep the banking sector its size. It's been over-promoted, and the whole purpose of advertising has, of course, been to promote dissatisfaction. So I spent quite a bit of time discussing advertising, which makes us dissatisfied with this model. Apparently, I really shouldn't want this one anymore, because apparently it's got the wrong number on it. This is an 8330, and I need a 9572 now or something. So therefore, I'm an inadequate human being because I've got this one anymore, because there's a new one to replace this. Well, I don't agree with that, but that is what the market tells me, and it's deliberately designed to put me more into debt if only I would go out and buy another one from my supplier. So I believe we're being forced into a situation where we end up with that. And there's a consequence of that pressure. One of the reasons why people feel so badly off at the moment, and why when you hear the private sector saying, well, we're not getting a pay rise, so why should the state sector? You're not, because there's been a massive shift inside our economy. You can argue slightly about the numbers, but 5 or 6% of GDP has shifted from being a return to labour over the last 15 years, I mean in wages, to being a return to capital profit. Profits at the moment are exceptionally high. The largest companies are making extraordinary profits at the moment, right through the recession. The reason why we can afford to fund the deficits at the moment is that large companies are sitting on the most phenomenal mountains of cash, which they will not invest and which they are lending to governments to pay for the deficit. It's a fundamental accounting equation. Martin Wolf wrote some brilliant articles about it last week in the Financial Times, and he got it absolutely spot on in terms of the economics of this. But profit is rising inexorably because labour is having less and is being squeezed out. We have to rebalance that equation, and part of that will be actually having more in the state sector, in my question. How far can we go? Can we afford to pay for this? Look, I'll go back to the research I did on tax evasion. Italy has at the moment got a deficit of 1.9 trillion euros. That's a lot of noughts on the end. Its current rate of tax evasion is 183 billion euros a year in my estimate. Now, of course, that's an estimate. I mean, and you could never recover it all. But that's because they've got a shadow economy of 27%. We've got a shadow economy of about 12.5 to 13% in this country, so half that of Italy. Now, I still think that's far too high here, and the government claims that actually it's only 6 or 7%, which would make us by far the cleanest place in the world, which is quite implausible, because we're not. Absolutely cuckoo land by HM Treasury, which is frankly what they speak a lot of the time. But inside that, if Italy had only managed our rate of tax evasion, its total external debt at the moment would be well under $1 trillion. Trillion euros. Nobody would be having a euro crisis, nor would Greece, whose shadow economy is 27.5%. These places would not be suffering crises if they'd only collected their tax. They could have afforded to pay. But what they chose to do was not do so and borrow. So the mistake wasn't whether they could afford that level of spending. They could afford that level of spending. After all, we could afford the level of spending we had on state employees. All we're doing now is making them sit at home and do nothing, which is obviously the most productive thing you can do with people, is make them sit around doing nothing. But that's what we're making them do, rather than pay them to do a useful day's work. Italy and Greece could afford their level of spending because they actually had people that weren't doing it. But now, like Spain, half of young people under 25 aren't working there. So we've got to actually see the power of tax to liberate that. As I say, that's dealt with in here. And one of the things that I believe is that actually the state really does have the right to tax, the right to demand tax, and the right to collect tax. And I argue that very strongly in here, but we've forgotten that too, because it's become, tax is a bogey word. No politician can say, I'm going to raise the tax to pay for the services you want. We're going to have to say that.